Okay, this is a special day. My name is Latrice Burks-Palmerio. Welcome to my YouTube channel. I am a plaintiff's attorney for Black women and our awesome allies. Today is a special day because it's full circle. With me is a mentor and a friend of mine, and we are going to talk about marital agreements and estate planning. I will allow her to introduce herself at this time.
Hello, everyone. My name is Genoveva Meza Talbott, and I'm an attorney. Like she said, I try to mentor. I have my own business, but I'm sure we'll talk about all that and some more. Just happy to be here. I'm in California and LA County, and I try to support and connect with as many women as possible to sort of educate as best I can on what I can do to help. So, anyway, glad to be here.
Thank you again for coming. And look, this is a full circle moment for us. I want to talk about briefly, if I can, how we met.
Sure.
Do you remember? I think we actually talked about it briefly before we went live, but it was a very special day. USC Law School has this first generation professionals program. I met Genoveva during the Speed Mentor event. It was great, and I just remember her personality being so big. And I remember, and I asked you, I was like, "Okay, what's your zodiac sign?" And then you said yes, and I think I said everything else but Capricorn, which makes which is everything to me. My late mother was a Capricorn. I'm a
Okay.
Virgo. I love Capricorns. It's a natural bond we have, and I just remember you being really down to earth when I started the Women of Color Collective at USC. You came and you were on our first panel, so you're like an OG person in my life, and you showed me what a woman of color lawyer looks like. So I'm grateful for you. Thank you.
Thank you for saying that. I do remember meeting you, and USC does have, I don't know how active they are now, but that program was so great because I think it was the first time that I was able to connect with students that had this sort of additional experience in the world and leading up to law school, right? Because most law schools, it's just not like that. The majority of people have a certain background, demographic, etc. So happy to meet you and to see everything that you've accomplished and how you've evolved. I don't even know what year that was, but it's been some years, right?
Right. I think so. I started in 2017. So I've known you for almost a decade at this point. It's like, which is hard to believe, but that's how like time flies. And again, like, I've watched you, step into this space where you kind of I call you like one of those like, everyday lawyers because you help with like life events that we all like kind of like experience on a regular basis. So, on that, I wanted to ask you about your work when it comes to marital agreement. So what should well, first of all, just tell me a little bit about your work with that arena.
Yeah, so let me give you a little background. So I've been practicing, so I've known you for 10 years, for about 22 years. And so it's been a bit. But the first 16 or so, let's say, I was always into helping families and kids before law school, through college, and even then always volunteering and mentoring. So this whole, helping a family direct one-on-one was always important to me. So as after law school, I took a very unpopular, uncommon path at USC after graduating, and I went into family law. And that was a really, really impactful experience for me. And during those 16 plus years, I worked at different firms, and I also had my own firm, but it was really a unique experience in my opinion, because I was able to help, every type of client I had. I did a lot of pro bono. I did your traditional households, and I had, which is more unique, I think, this high-end net worth celebrity. There aren't a lot of those firms, and I was fortunate enough to work at one of those firms. So it really gave me this broad perspective of helping families and how impactful family law is, right? And divorces and prenups and things like that. But I did litigation mainly for about 16 years. And if anybody knows or has worked at a family law firm, knows anybody that's gone through a divorce, It is a lot. It is tough on the people involved, and lawyers are involved in it. So after 16 years, I needed a break from living in the world of divorce and all that for every day. So when I decided to wind down that litigation practice, I decided to really figure out how can I blend all this experience into something a little bit more positive, more peaceful, more proactive, right? And believe me, for a while I said, I don't want to do anything more with divorces or anything because burnt out. But I said, no, I have all this experience. Like I need to apply it. After some thinking and processing, I created this firm, which is all of that. It is peaceful, it is proactive, preventative. And so my practice areas are peaceful divorces, which under that, it could be mediation, right? It could just be other uncontested as in non-litigated divorces. And we can get into that if you want later. But basically, there's various ways people can get divorced without fighting in court. There's multiple ways. It's not what people know, though. People don't know this. They assume they have to do. So that's one side of my practice. And a sub of that is prenups and postnups. And again, I have so much of my client, so many of my clients are women and, women of color. And it just has evolved organically that way. And I love it. But there are so many entrepreneurs, professional, hardworking, and they need these marital agreements. They really benefit from them. So I definitely include that in my practice. But the other side of my practice, and everything does overlap, because like you said, I'm involved with the everyday, your life situation, is this idea of estate planning is the technical term, but really it's legacy planning, marital planning, it's planning. Right. And so I help people plan for death. I help people plan for divorce through the prenups. I help people plan for incapacity if that ever happens. Right. And so I have this other side of my practice that deals with that as well as death, because that's a part of life. Right. Yeah. So I help people deal with different legal aspects of death through that department. So they're very sort of complementary practices. And honestly, it is a practice area that can touch, for example, women at all these points in their lives. Right. It just does, because whether we like it or not, and some people don't, lawyers are involved in a lot of really important things. And so I try to support my clients at these various phases in their lives. So that's my practice in a nutshell.
Well, I wanted to follow up and just kind of say, kudos to you for finding your sweet spot and working in it, right? Because I talk to women of color every day, and they're going through issues at work and what have you not. But what I try to tell them is, like, you can work in peace and you can work using all of these skills that you accumulated over the years, and that's exactly what you're doing. So I'm proud of you for doing that. And so I wanted to ask you, why should a professional woman of color consider marital agreements? And that includes prenups and postnups.
That's loaded, and it's super important. And I do love to talk about it. So there's a lot of reasons. One of the reasons is that a prenup is not the negative thing that people think about. So, people, I say this for my estate planning too, is the state that you live in. So I'm, California lawyer, so I can only speak on California, but every state has laws for all these different things like marriage, death, right? So marriage in particular there's a whole code saying what are the rules of your marriage and how it's all going to be handled with respect to money, assets, and all these financial and just family things, right? It even deals with kids and all of that. So there's a set sort of marital contract that people sign. And the reason why people should consider at least educating themselves on marital agreements, premarital or post, but let's focus on pre, which is the most common, is because this set package that California has given you or your state might not be the package that you and your future spouse want or like, right? And that's all that the prenup is. The prenup is saying, yeah, thank you, but that's not how we want to do our marriage, right? So if you think about our, professional, entrepreneur women that are just, they're not used to just taking that package that was given to them, right? It just doesn't mesh. So this is perfect for that mindset. You already have that mindset of kind of like charting your own course and doing things your way. Why wouldn't you do that with marriage, right? So,
so cool.
and then, yeah, and it's not negative, right?
Yeah.
It is a mutual. It's not his, hers, like, it's both people's contract. It literally is a contract. So I think that beyond discussing I can get into the specifics of why it's helpful, but overall, it goes along with that mindset of, taking charge and being empowered about your life overall. And this is just another one of those ways that you can look at this marriage and also construct it the way you want.
Yeah, no, that's so awesome. And I wanted to actually follow up by saying, like, I have a prenup. I have girlfriends that do too. It's literally it's exactly what you said. It's not that like negative thing that people have like associated. And then it's also in my opinion, it's actually kind of feminist to have one, because it's treating you and your partner like you're equals, and you are. So, but I wanted to follow up with you by asking, so do you have any tips for our sisters of color who are very like religious and don't, if that kind of like subscribe to this notion that they're not, like in like control? Do you have any
this is such a hot topic for me. And I was just talking to someone that mentioned that a friend of theirs, encountered during their wedding planning that their particular religious head told them that they couldn't get married if they had one, right? So there are, which was shocking to me because, like I said, there are laws already that vary by state that already make rules about how your marriage is going to be, money, assets are going to be allocated, etc. So this is just a different contract, changing some of that. So, but I understand that, and I am a believer, and I know that we try to walk that line and all that. But I'll say this, part of it, I think, is lack of information and education on what it is. Right. And that could be the people considering it, the future spouses, and it could be, be the actual, religious leaders that are also not. There is this very archaic way of thinking about prenups. Right. Like they are these documents for people to get divorced in a few years and all these, and that's not really what it is, right? Right. In fact, California has very strict rules on what we can put in a prenup. Mm-hmm. And so, it is against public policy to encourage a divorce. So, right. Very contradictory to, I think, the mainstream, sometimes religious view of prenups. It's actually not that at all. It is not encouraging divorce, although, there's a divorce percentage, right? People are getting divorced. So that's something we just have to accept. For sure. And this is one way that people can really, I tell people, like, when you are in love, is probably the best time for you to pre-negotiate how your separation, if it ever comes, is going to happen.
That is brilliant. Brilliant.
Like, this is the best time to have these discussions. So let's have them so that if there is a separation, by the way, it also addresses death, right? So like life is not just black and white in that regard. Like there's a lot of nuance, and a prenup will address all that. So I know it is difficult, but I'd say arm yourself if you are in that position of being told or feeling like it's counter to your religious beliefs about marriage and all of that. Arm yourself with knowledge about what this actually is, so that then you can educate those that might push back, because really it is just another contract like the one you're entering into, right? In the state that you're getting married. And it is just an opportunity for you both to have a say, be equal partners in this decision-making about your life.
Yeah, that's just like it all really like, like resonates with me, especially this part about like being kind to each other and like negotiating when you're in love, because that's true. And I think one of the reasons why like divorces can be messy is because when those terms aren't ironed out, when you are in love, when it's time for the heat, you're not operating from like reason, and that's really so profound. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, no problem. Of course. Yeah. So yeah, on that issue, I never personally thought about that until very recently. It was brought up to me about, the struggle with getting that pushback on the religious, because to me, I don't even see it as religious, the prenup, right? I don't connect the two, but I know for a lot of people, a lot of things overlap, right?
Yeah. So that's so cool. So I also want to follow up on this notion of like a peaceful divorce. Anecdotally, I am a child of divorce, and my parents at first it was really heated. It eventually cooled down, which I think happens to a lot of people, especially when there are like the children involved. But tell me more about this notion of a peaceful divorce, and where did you kind of come up with that term and concept?
Yeah. So, after all those years of litigating, which means, for the most part, I was handling cases where people were not agreeing, because
Mm-hmm.
divorces, and I know every state is different, but for the most part, a divorce is simple. And I know it doesn't feel simple, but it is simple, right? It is division of assets and debts. And if there are children, we address, what is best for the kids. And we address, how long have these people been married, and do they need to continue supporting each other financially for some time?
Wow.
That's it, right? It is math, and it is a lifestyle sort of looking at life, but that's what it is. But after all those years, I realized, what this system, which is very broken, just the court system, the legal system, it allows for people to infuse into this very simple process all of their emotions, and to utilize it to be able to continue, feeling, right? Feeling. And I have my theories on a lot of this, but bottom line is, over that, and I remember talking to a judge that was a friend one time, and we were just kind of discussing. He goes, look, bottom line is 90% of the people that see me or before me in court just want someone in a robe to tell them what they already know. And that's the truth, because like half of the people there, if not 85% of the people, in my opinion, that already know what the right answer is. They just don't like it. It's a feeling. And so for me, it just, it's a turnoff, right? To just see this part of life. And I think it's necessary, and there always needs to be good, caring, ethical divorce lawyers out there, because people are very vulnerable during that emotional state. But personally, for me, I was just, I got turned off. And then also the idea that a lot of people didn't know that there was an alternate way. So that to me was kind of my light bulb, like, oh no, this is, and in my really high-end practice is when I saw that the most, that people really knew that they didn't have to go litigate. Because in high-end divorces, it was really looked like dissolving a business partnership. Very. And we didn't go to court that often. It was all done by agreement, negotiating numbers and ledgers and accountants and this, right? And so I was like, right? And I thought, there is a knowledge gap here about how you can do a divorce. Not every divorce requires this litigious, toxic process. And so that's kind of how I started. And when I did, I've gone through some different evolutions of my practice, but I knew that for my personal health and well-being, I was going to stop being this shield and sword for my clients, as in no more litigation. It is a rough prep. To be a lawyer is rough, but then that one is just an extra, just, So I knew personally that's not, but I wanted to use my experience. And I said, well, how do I change that narrative, or help change that narrative of this divorce process, to show people there are different ways to do this. Not everybody's a candidate, because it takes two to tango, but if there are willing participants, you can have a peaceful or more peaceful divorce process. And that's the area that I focus on, and the type of clients that I help, those people that at least are invested in knowing that they want that process versus the alternate process.
Right. No, that's very helpful. And let me ask you, are the people that normally take this route, do they have kids? Like, is there more at stake that they tend to kind of think about to like inform that fight?
I think I have a mixed bag. I have my clients are, some of them are more, kids are out of the house
Hmm.
already, and they just, they've come to terms with the marriage part of this contract is no more. Let's dissolve it.
Right.
But then there's the parents with young kids that also are very interested because they know from personal experience or overall
Hmm.
that the alternate process is just not going to be good, right? So there's different motivators for people to do it. And some people, it's just they want to minimize cost. That is a legitimate reason because honestly, in any practice area that I've touched upon, court should be the last resort. Like
For
being
sure.
before a judge is the most expensive and stressful and all that. So some people, that's their motivation. I want to spend as little as possible dissolving this. Great. This is the least expensive, right? So yeah, I think it depends. But I do have a sort of a mixed bag of types of clients that find peaceful divorce to be sort of the best option for them.
No, and I love that. And we kind of have noticed that like courts haven't been the same since COVID. A lot of courts are like backed up anyway. So it's like, if you want to take that route, it'll take more time, even with like, like litigation of civil, criminal, it's all backed up. I was clerking for a federal judge during COVID, and we just saw how like that like docket just grew for
Oh,
everybody.
absolutely. And you know what's so interesting as far as divorces, I think you're right. It never quite recovered. Some counties are worse off than others in that way. But,
Yeah.
in the divorces, if a divorce took a year or two, like the outcome at the end was very rarely any different than what the outcome would have been at the beginning.
I
And they
see.
just had to go through the exercise
Wow.
arguing and going back and forth. I mean, and so to me, that was very obvious as a lawyer. And we try, well, at least I did. My partner and I, we were notoriously just always pushing settlement, telling our clients, you're literally just going through this exercise that's
Hmm.
going to cost you X amount, and you're going to end up in this place right here. But sometimes, like again, because the court system is broken and such, there is a lack of control there because one party can really just pull everything into court.
Wow.
So my clients sometimes couldn't help but be dragged into the system, and there I was, right, with the sword and the shield. But yeah, it's an interesting observation about the court system. It certainly hasn't gotten any better. It's definitely
Yeah.
even worse.
Yeah, and I just wonder if it'll ever improve. But again, like that's neither here nor there. Um,
Yeah.
I wanted to ask about estate planning next. Now,
Yeah.
um, who in your opinion should have a will?
Yeah. All adults. And,
Okay.
and if you're an adult, yes, there are non-will related ways and tools for you to leave certain things in order, right? Like I tell people, yes, if you have a bank account and you have a pay on death beneficiary, that is a way that person, right? So there are ways, but you need to know what you're doing. You need to pay attention. You need to be diligent, right? To basically say, I'm going to DIY this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You need to be very diligent, know what you're doing, and do it right. Okay, how often do people get all those three right? They don't.
Right.
So that's where an estate plan, which by the way, just for those, I know it's confusing and sometimes people are like, well, what is the estate plan? Is just the plan. How or what's in it, that's where lawyers' advice and client, partnership come in. But the
Hmm.
plan could be just a will. The plan could be a will and a trust. The plan could be a different, depending on the person, based on what they have going on. But bottom line is, if you're an adult, there has to be a plan, not just for death, by the way. Part of estate planning is also planning for other scenarios like incapacity,
Right.
right?
Don't think
It
about
may
that.
not happen, but guess what? There should be a plan in case it does,
Right.
right? So an estate plan is very I know it's an overused word sometimes, but it's holistic. Like as a lawyer, we look at the whole picture and then we
Mhm.
try to put together a plan, legal, formal, for all these various scenarios. So to answer your question, everyone over 18 needs
That's
that.
awesome.
And I'll just do a side note on this,
Please.
that For those people that have adult children, it is a rude awakening when you realize that your adult children in college or otherwise, you are no longer the person that can do anything for them. You do not have next, and you cannot be automatically the person that goes to the doctor and can handle things for them. It is a rude awakening for the parent and for the child, right? The adult child. So I always tell people there is a plan I offer, but there are estate plannings that you even do with college students and young adults, because as soon as you turn 18, the whole world, financial and otherwise, changes for someone. And so anyway, what I do is help people plan for that, however best we can, figure it out.
That's so cool. And listen, like people don't even think about that. It's almost like there is like a notion of like, I think like Western society that is just like adverse to the truth. Sometimes it's like the facts are something could happen to a loved one. Something, we all do die. Like we have to like be honest about.
Well, I mean, it's not very sexy to talk about
exactly.
this. And,
there we go.
And I laugh. My husband's like, I've said to him, like, what's wrong with me? Death and divorce. Like the fact that these are the two areas of law, but I think they're so significant in a person's life. But to your point, it's just people don't want to talk about it. There could be cultural reasons, just spiritual reasons, all these reasons, but it's definitely not a sexy topic. So if you're going to talk about something, that is bottom of the list for most people, right? And sadly, when they know they need to talk about it because of illness or something, then they're scrambling to do this. And sometimes it's a little too late to do it the best way. As a lawyer, my practice is what it is. I've already said what the areas are, but right now we are all about generational wealth is a hot topic. It is sexy. It is sexy. And I think what it is doing and is really, I love it. It's really kind of empowering people to think beyond today and the present and think long term, right? This is why, women of color, I think Black and Latino women lead with business and entrepreneurship. We are growing. It is awesome. However, I think what's happening is that, again, it's sexy and people want to really focus on the growth and creation, but we're not quite at the mindset to think about this other not so sexy part of growth and creation, which is protection and passing it on, right? So I understand the challenge of that, of kind of going into that, talking about growth and all the sexiness of that, then, sort of like this Debbie Downer talk of like, well, let's talk about, I get that. I understand. So I'm hoping that through the way I talk about it, where and when I talk about it, and sort of how I'm helping a little bit to sort of change that mindset about this should be part of like, you go to the dentist, you go to financial, and you also do this. Like, it's just should be part of it. And I'm trying to bring it into that, as best I can.
Yeah. And you know what? You actually just like gave me another thought. Like part of someone's legacy should be like passing it on to their heirs, but making sure that they're good in your absence. Like that should be like, that's exactly what you were talking about. Like this larger notion of like, legacy,
And people are thinking about it, but not doing the things.
Right.
So the idea is I am growing this and creating businesses and growing my wealth for my kids and future generations. But then that's where they stop in a lot of people, not everyone, certainly, but it's like, but then how do you do that? How does it actually, do you know how that happens? And I think that's the not so sexy sort of education and knowledge gap that we have going on, especially in certain communities. And that's another part that I realize that some of it is just lack of knowledge and awareness of this procedure that you need. Sometimes people just think things happen almost automatically. And that is a harsh reality when you're like, well, no, I'm married, so I will be inheriting this thing from my spouse, right? I said, yes, but it requires this whole legal process. What? But things don't just happen, right? So I think that it, like, what's I saying? The devil's in the details. I know that's negative. It has a negative connotation, but the details are important. There's the theory of, yes, you are the heir to this person, for example, but how does that happen? They are shocked to find out all the legal things that have to happen with transfer of wealth and things like that.
No, that's so true. And here's the thing, like my parents both passed away when I was in college. But one of the things that I've noticed, and other people who also deal with this, when you're scrambling to figure out your, like deceased loved ones' affairs, it's hard to focus on grieving and focusing on the memories, you know?
And
It
I
really
just,
is.
yeah, absolutely. And that's something that is, you can't have that time back,
Right.
and it is preventable, right? But
There we
again, there's
go.
this, yeah, it's just, and I understand the challenge, believe me. And that's why when people come to me, I say, no judgment. You don't need to give me reasons why you haven't done it yet, or this. Really, you're here. We're doing it now, and we'll do the best we can given the circumstances, right? Because sometimes people wait till the very last minute, right, to do
Yeah.
things. The best time to do it is when you don't need it. Bottom
Ooh,
line.
I like that.
The best time to do it is when you do not need it.
Put that on a t-shirt. That's
Right?
really good.
Because that's a
Yeah,
question. Well, when should I get it? I said, when you don't need it. Once you need it because of this, or that, then we're in a whole different scenario.
right.
But I get it. It is a tough subject. It is very real. It is
Yeah.
not something that most people look forward to. In life insurance, on a side note, is very similar. The people that just refuse because somehow, they have all these
Mhm.
feelings about it. And again, another very useful way to transfer wealth to the people you love. And to your point earlier about leaving people, sometimes people say, well, no, like there's people that don't necessarily have that motivation of leaving things for others, but at least there's people, like nobody's estate just gets handled when they die. It doesn't automatically. So at the very least, if you just care about like leaving things in order, that
Mhm.
alone, right, is a reason to do this. Because if you don't, somebody else has to pick up the slack for what you didn't do.
Yeah.
And it's also a nice chance too for those that don't quite have like a children or somebody they need to or want to pass it on. It's a chance to be super philanthropic, right, and leave
Yeah.
your estate to charities and causes that you believe in. So again, everybody's motivated by different things. That's
Right.
definitely what I've learned. And
Uh-huh.
so when I'm talking to people, that's part of the discussion to figure out why their reasons are for finally talking to me. And
Mhm.
sort of sometimes I get a lot of questions on how people asking for advice on how to talk to their loved ones or other people they know about this. And that's what I always say, find out what their motivator is. Everybody has a different reason for wanting to do this.
And it's so true. So anecdotally, I'll tell you my story. My father saw my brothers and I scrambling to handle my mom's like funeral affairs, and we were just, I was 19. He was so like disappointed and like distraught that we couldn't grieve, that he
Yeah.
literally marched into his job that following Monday and got life insurance. And when he passed away, we were in a better position than my mom left us. So
Yeah.
you're right about everyone has their own like that factor, that like motivational event. For him, it was seeing us struggle the first time.
Yeah. And some of my clients come in after experiencing or seeing a family, friend, neighbor go through this sort of, and same goes for divorces, by the way.
Right,
Um,
right.
Children of divorce as well. Like part of them wanting this peaceful, maybe prenup, or just, by the way, for the piece, part of the marital planning that I do for not just women, but the majority of my clients are like-minded, community women in the community. But part of what I do for marital planning is not just looking at prenup. It is literally educating women on what this marital contract that they're going to enter affects. And not only, and it affects death, it affects everything. So sometimes I say, just at least get educated. Prenups may not be for everyone, but can you at least be educated and do a session where I can answer questions and teach you? Well, the moment you sign and say, I do, this is now your reality. And it is very shocking to people. There's a lot of misinformation and lack of information of what it does. So anyway, the same goes for death and everything else. Just being knowledgeable, at least you know what's going to happen if you do nothing. If you there is a probate code, like I said, for the family. So probate code will have a process for death stuff, right? Do you like it? And some people say, yeah, that's fine with me. Okay, great. But at least now you know. Rarely do they like it, by the way, rarely.
Exactly.
But there is a process. Don't you worry. You know, there will be a process that a lawyer will handle if you don't do it yourself. But most people that I encounter that come to me are the people that aren't used to just letting things just happen without their input. So
yeah. And you're right. It's a specific type of person. Most of us have those like, you know, like thoughts, but we don't always know to act on them. So I wanted to like talk about the like strong commonality between Black women and Latinas. So you know, it was no coincidence that my like motivation to start the Women of Color Collective at USC was this notion that we have a lot in common. One of the things that I noticed that we have in common is this like maternal role of like, I got to take care of everybody else like before I can take care of myself, right? So tell me, like, what are your thoughts on like this bond that our communities have, and how can that like inform our need to get more like involved in like this pre-planning stage?
Sure. I mean, I think because of what you just said is why so many of my clients are women of color, because they were already in these roles in their homes, in their businesses. You know, they're caretaking, they are decision making, they are dealing with a lot mental load, right? You hear this term now, like they're already doing it. And so I think that's why this is just, there's that, like I said, I think it's an awareness, right? So our goal as people that can provide these transformative legal services is to educate these women that are already in that mindset, because, you know, this commonality is that there's a million things already on their plate,
right?
Just a million. And so if knowing about this marital estate planning, all this planning prevention, or, you know, is not readily available to them, it's just going to be put on the back burner, right? Unless they are educated in it, they experience it. It's just, gosh, it goes to the bottom of the list. So I think that for these reasons is why I have so many clients that would fit this model that you were talking about, of these women that are just go-getters, doing all the things, right? And in fact, my practice, the way I've set it up is for them. My clients tend to have, you know, not all, they're entrepreneurs or, you know, professionals. They travel a lot. They love to eat out. And so they're busy, right? So my practice is always like, I use a lot of tech. I make things convenient, easy to do, because my clients don't have time to be coming to my office to drop off a paperwork or sign. Like I'm like e-signatures, client online secure portals. My whole practice is built for them, because that is organically what's happened, because we are the ones, and I say we, include myself, I am an entrepreneur, I have my own business as well. We're out there doing all these things, creating this wealth and being entrepreneurs. And I think that it's time for legal services to sort of adjust to us. And that's what I'm trying to do with mine, at least.
That's so cool. And I know you're when it comes to fees, you charge like based on what the needs are. Some of these, like, you know, like old school lawyers will just like, you know, have you just pay a chunk of money and they pull from when they need to. You're like a different model, and it seems like it works better for you.
It does. It works better for me. It works better for my clients. I think that I try to be as innovative as possible with all types of aspects of my business, not just the way I relate to my clients, communicate, but yeah, even the fee structure, right? I don't just stick to, and again, I've been practicing for like 22 years. So I'm that generation that really had my foot, you know, boomers were the ones training me up, right? But I'm a Gen X, but I have my foot in the millennial world in that way. And so I kind of blend that and kind of put it all together to be as innovative as possible, and with my practice. And it's been great. My clients give me great feedback, and I'm constantly figuring out ways to improve even more.
That's so great. So I don't want to take too much more of your time, but thank you again very much for joining us today. How can we stay in touch with you?
Yeah, so here I think they should be able to see my website is mesatalbottlaw.com. I am probably most active on Instagram.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just that's my favorite one. And it's Attorney Mesa Talbott. So that's probably where you'll see more of the content. I put a lot of time and effort trying to, again, address that knowledge gap that is out there. So I put more content on Instagram, like videos, reels, all kinds, just on all these various life things that I help people through and the support that I provide. So check out Instagram if you want to learn and really get to know me more than, what today would do, obviously. I think Instagram is great for that. And I am one of the attorneys in California that is adopting it, as I know that some of the old school lawyers don't.
Right.
And there are a lot of rules. I will say we do have a lot of rules for our clients for their protection, right? And so the disclaimer being, remember, y'all, I'm just California, right? And all the information that I put out today and on my Instagram is education, information only. Only when you actually have a one-on-one consultation with a lawyer is that information really kind of crosses that threshold from just education. Okay.
Yep. It's wonderful. Well, thank you so very much.
Thank you. Yes.
I love full circle moments. What I can do, I'm going to throw a link to your IG page and like the description after the video so people can stay in touch with you. But thank you very much. Have a nice day.
Thank you, Latrice. All right. We'll be in touch. All right. Take care.
So good.